Meg Hillier is the MP for South Hackney and Shoreditch, and she's been representing this area for 20 years. It's a very difficult and diverse job in which she is trying to encourage the government to be more open about its use of data, trying to involve the local community in what is a very elite and exclusive technology industry, and also trying to work out what to do with that really messy roundabout. She's going to tell us more. Welcome to Tech Sessions, Meg. How long have you been representing this community?
Well, one way or another, I've been representing the Old Street area for nearly 20 years, but I've been the MP for the area since 2005.
What are the really burning issues then that entrepreneurs and tech startups come to you with?
Well, the two repetitive things that keep coming up are the issue around visas for people with particularly high-level skills that we don't have the skills yet to recruit on. And then they're very interested actually in what skills work is going on to develop the skills for the future. And so both those areas are areas I'm working on quite intensely with various people here in Shoreditch.
It's been said before that the tech community perhaps isn't accessible enough to the real people that live in the East End, which is a very diverse and not very wealthy community of people. So what can be done to make those companies more representative of the community they're in?
Well, what's very good about the tech businesses is they're very open to suggestion and they're very willing to embrace new ideas. So when I'm talking to them and find out, for example, as with one company, that they recruited 80 people in the last year from an agency in West London, they were very up for approaching and dealing with the local job recruitment bodies to make sure they're recruiting people locally. That's for lower skilled jobs. They're also very interested in engaging with some of our schools and others. I had an event with 50 young women from sixth formers with Women in Technology here just in the last month, and that was really great to see those young women from local schools learning from women entrepreneurs about what the options are for them. So at all levels we're looking at that. And we also have a university technical college just moments from where we're sitting here in Box Park, and that's working with 14 to 19-year-olds to train them up in the tech skills that will be needed in 5 and 6 years' time, and they're working directly with many of the industries and businesses locally here in Shoreditch.
Well, that's very interesting, because I think there's often a perception among younger people and people at schools, partly because technology isn't taught in a very imaginative way.
You're telling me, yes.
But they all use Facebook and they use these technology sites. But how meaningfully are those companies and those skills represented in the educational system? And that's a massive issue.
That's a big issue in the short time to discuss, but no, there is a lot of work going on actually. Government has finally got the plot on this and is actually understanding that, you know, ICT doesn't stand for I can type. Actually, we need to have people programming in schools. So the advent of the Raspberry Pi is great. I confess a personal interest as a mother of a Raspberry Pi addict. He got it at Christmas and is planning to take over the world with the Raspberry Pi. But it's shown me the enthusiasm that can arise. And I'm 44, and there was a BBC computer when I was at school. I think we had 1 or 2 across the whole school. But we learned a little bit of programming. I learned about binary coding. Then suddenly there was this whole period where no one learned anything, and now hopefully we're going to get to the point we see it taught again. The big issue is of course about upskilling teachers, many of whom were that period who didn't have any programming input at school, so they may have done it academically but they don't. I talked to a young sixth former the other day. She didn't know what a hackathon was, and I thought yeah, you can do your A-levels as much as you want, but you need to understand that that's not alone going to get you a job in Shoreditch, so there's still lots of work to be done.
Poor teachers though, and the constant go-vification of the education industry, just pushing down initiative after initiative and policy after policy, and it's always the teachers on the front line that get it. So what can we meaningfully do to help teachers who are trying to teach technology?
Well, I think that the curriculum has to allow them to do that. So some of the most innovative teachers already do what they can within the current curriculum, but it's actually saying that this is a very valuable modern skill. And we've got this whole debate about vocational and academic qualifications, but actually many people need to program or understand programming in the modern way of work. And I think we've just got to really do it through the ICT agenda, but actually get heads and others to understand that this is important. In Hackney, our University Technical College is going to become a hub, we hope, for other schools that need to understand. So they've got somewhere, some expert, if you like, that they can go to, some expert educational establishment that can really emphasise the importance of this and make it seem less scary, because schools have, as you say, have got a lot on their plate. There's initiative after initiative coming down the line. I think this is best done through the specialists in this case, and they will then help to bring schools more widely onto this agenda.
It's absolutely essential that there are proper links to industry. I mean, vast companies, especially the multinationals, the American companies who are extremely wealthy, that's where the resources are, and isn't part of the responsibility is with them in
yes.
contributing to the education of the people they want to work for them.
And speaking locally in Hackney, we have a lot of good partnerships between schools and businesses. So, we've got the City of London, we've got KPMG, UBS, and at the University Technical College, a range of big and small tech businesses which work from day one to develop the curriculum with the school. And those pupils every half term deal with a real issue from industry. So half of them do health technology, the rest do digital technologies, and they will look at a real industry problem. So they're learning from day one what it is like to be in the business world and why it's popular, particularly with many of my very ambitious parents in Hackney, because people have stereotypes of Hackney, but there's no poverty of ambition, I can tell you. They see this link to a business and to work from day one for their 14-year-old really, really valuable, because they get industry experience, maybe job placements, maybe apprenticeships, maybe sponsored through university in time. So I think that's a real opportunity. But one University Technical College doesn't do it all, which is why it's got to become a hub. And we've got to see that model extended wider. And let's face it, Cambridge, Shoreditch, they're places that will work a little easier than, I don't know, Surrey Heath maybe, but maybe I'm stereotyping this Education Secretary's constituency, I don't know.
How is the government doing on opening data? Because you've been pushing a few initiatives in this area.
That's right. I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee, which is the public spending watchdog of Parliament, and we're very pro as a committee, and I'm very pro having data out there available for members of the public to see what's going on in their public services. But what tends to happen, of course, is the civil service just shove a load of inaccessible data out there, and we're all supposed to go through these complicated charts and work out. For example, one I picked up recently about whether a hospital is performing very well. That you can't access it very easily unless you've got the right tools to do that. And I think there's a real opportunity for some of the very small companies here actually in Shoreditch to work to make maybe an app or an accessible way of accessing that data. And I've had now a couple of government departments express an interest in working with companies here in Shoreditch. So I'm trying to get those partnerships now together to see if we can have, maybe a hackathon with a bit of information from the Home Office, the Department of Health, and see what could be done to manipulate that data so that you and I can perhaps just hop onto our iPhone or our smartphone, because I suppose I shouldn't do product placement, and just look up to see how many people in a hospital suffered from a particular complication, or what the record is of your local police service, or whatever it may be. And it should be very easy because the data's there, but it's been put in a very indigestible format. And the civil service, some of them will say, tick the box, data's out there. It's no good to you and me if we can't understand it. So I think there's a real opportunity.
How is the government doing overall on its support for the technology community? Tech City, for example, is that just PR, or is there something meaningful?
Well, there's a little bit of PR about it, but if any Prime Minister is interested in an industry in an area, I say let's embrace it and get what we can from that, because it certainly puts it on the map. It was on the map anyway for those who knew, but it's become a buzz in government, and it means that sometimes money follows Prime Minister's interests. That happens with whoever the Prime Minister is. So I'm going to say, bring it on, let's take it the way we can. But if you look at what the proposals were around Old Street Roundabout, £50 million suddenly announced for Old Street Roundabout. There's lots of things about how that was handled. But again, prime ministerial initiatives, let's grab it and see what we can get that will be meaningful locally. And that's for me about jobs and skills.
So what should they be doing with 50 million then? I mean, does Old Street need a big bells and whistles roundabout? Because logistically that's not possible for Old Street Roundabout, is it?
No, I've represented the area for, as I say, nearly 20 years, and you actually physically can't build on Old Street Roundabout. It's just not possible. You spend more than half the 50 million, I think, propping it up. So that's not likely to happen in exactly that forms. But what we could have is something that is a draw to get maybe some of the school children we were talking about in to learn about the opportunities and then the skills needed to take this on. And if you look at this area, in Broad, you've got the city fringe around just north of Broadgate, you've got the digital tech companies, which, where media companies still are, some of them, and then north of Hoxton Square, where people go for a good night out, you've got estates with a great deal of poverty. It's one of the top 10 poorest wards in the UK. My real aim is to get some of those people eventually skilled up to take some of the jobs at different levels in this area. And if we could get that out of the £50 million or begin to make some headway there, then it would be really worthwhile.
There's some fascinating issues there, Meg. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll be following a lot of those issues quite carefully.
Well, I'll be in touch.
Thank you.